Are the Democrats setting themselves up for victory here, especially with the president who is no stranger to a rhetorical street fight? Let's get after it with Democratic Congressman Ted Lieu of California. Congressman, good to have you on the show.
Thank you, Chris. Good to be on your show.
So, Ted, help me understand the play. You've got Trump in a bad place. He made a big mistake with how he treated those kids on the border. He went from having high ground about law and order to low ground. And that Fugazi executive order, backpedaling, terrible situation there that we're tracking night by night. But then your party decides to play to advantage by saying abolish ICE. Is that the right play?
Well, the president is still making the same mistake. There's still over 2,000 kids, as we sit here
100%.
tonight, that were ripped away from the parents that have not been reunited. And then in terms of ICE, I believe three things need to happen. First, Homeland Security Secretary Nielsen needs to resign. Second, the new ICE director needs to change the culture of ICE. And third, Congress needs to change the policies of ICE so they don't terrorize communities. But if none of that happens, then I support abolishing ICE and replacing it with an agency that is more consistent with America's values.
But you don't think that that position, Ted, puts you right in the crosshairs of Trump saying you are about no borders and letting in anybody?
Right. Well, ICE is not Customs and Border Patrol, so ICE is not down there at the border. That's a whole different agency. So the president is just misleading the public. But keep in mind, this president has been bashing immigrants since the day he got inaugurated. And in return, Democrats have flipped 43 special elections. We won a Senate race in Alabama, won a congressional race in Pennsylvania. So Trump can keep bashing immigrants, but you're seeing the overwhelming majority of the American public supporting Democrats.
But this extreme position, now I'm saying that objectively. I get that he wants to call it radical. I don't want to get caught up in language. I leave that to you guys as the politicians. But to say we want to get rid of this agency, I've been hearing it more and more from the party. And I think that it is a position, objectively, that is fraught with some political risk attached to it. And what are you hearing within your own party about how much people want to embrace this?
Right. Well, we're a big tent party, so we welcome all different views. But when you listen to what people are saying, they're not saying abolish ICE and do nothing. They're saying abolish ICE and put it with a new agency that is not going to terrorize communities across America. ICE is a relatively new agency. It was created after 9/11. Mm-hmm. That's correct. And if you look at what Trump has done, for example, with his Muslim ban, he did nothing against Saudi Arabia, even though 17 of 19 hijackers came from Saudi Arabia, and terrorists are not coming in from the southern border. This is a wholly different issue, and ICE has taken their mission and strayed far afield from what it's supposed to be doing.
Well, it's one thing to attack the policies and the culture, because they're doing what the president and the executive instructs them to do through their cabinet secretary and the head of ICE. But that's different than saying get rid of it. And I have to tell you, when I hear it from lawmakers, you know, a couple of them here in New York where the show is out of, you know, with the new Congress member and one of the sitting senators saying it's got to go, it sounds like enforcement of the law is not a priority. Fair criticism.
I don't think it's fair, because if you listen carefully to what they're saying, a lot of media takes the first half of what they're saying because it does sound catchy. But the second half is they're saying put it either with a different department or put it with a new agency. They're not saying do nothing. And everyone in the Democratic Party supports enforcement of the laws. It's how you do it. And you shouldn't be terrorizing communities. By the way, ICE has many missions, including handling child pornography, dealing with child sex trafficking, dealing with counterfeit merchandise. And there have been ICE officials that have been in the media and in public reporting saying this focus on deportation is keeping us from dealing with these other critical missions. And I think if the American public were to see what ICE does, they're going to say, we don't want ICE to be wasting their time on deporting these folks who are not criminals, who are not doing any harm to America.
How sure are you of that? Because it could be the mainspring of the November elections. Are you sure that the American people believe, because we don't see it in the polls, as you know, Ted, polls can change, but the idea of, well, they came in illegally, but that's okay. We'll just find another way. That does not have popular support. Decency does. Humanity does. Being humane with who does come across illegally, I hear you on that. But the idea of coming across illegally is not the end of the game for people. I don't know that that has public acceptance, does it?
So I agree with you, Chris. And Democrats are not saying open borders because ICE doesn't have to do with our borders. It's a totally separate agency. But again, what we're seeing is ICE terrorizing communities in a way that makes us all less safe. What we want in these communities is people who are willing to go to the police and go to law enforcement if they see a crime, if they want to be a witness to things that are happening. But what ICE is doing is it's making people go into the shadows, and that makes all of us much less safe.
No, I hear you on that argument. That's a saleable one, and it's an interesting contrast heading into these midterms. The Democrats, for them, the given is that you seem to have your heart in the right place. The question is your head going to be in the right place in terms of how you enforce the law and keep the border safe? You have the opposite challenge on the Republican side. They've shown a paucity of heart with what they did separating these kids on the border. Their head was in the right place in terms of securing the border. How they decided to do it put them in a hole. We'll see who winds up on top because of this. Congressman Ted Lieu, good to have you on the show.
Thank you, Chris.
All right.